just as I was coming over, I was talking to somebody and they said, "You're going to give a presentation?" I'm like, "Yes." Why? I was like, "Why not? This camera is so boring." But I'm really, you know, to me, I've been in this industry for 15 years now, and I can't get more excited about introducing new products than you know, standing here telling you guys about it. So let's just jump into it. All right. So as I mentioned already, we're introducing two new product lines. One of them is a USB 3 CCD line of products, and the other one that's the Grasshopper 3, and the other one is Blackfly, which is a very small, very affordable PoE camera that we basically think is going to really change the price performance in this market. So, now the important thing is that when you are introducing a camera into the market, there isn't usually only one thing that, you know, differentiates the camera from other products. It's usually a combination of different things. So what I will do is, as I'm talking about these two product lines, I will talk to you about a little bit about the market conditions. I will talk about the imaging performance, the form factor or the shape and the size of the camera, the interface, the functionality, pricing, and then also in some cases the capability of the manufacturer is also quite important to make sure that that you can bring the camera and satisfy customer needs. So let's jump in. The Grasshopper. Okay. Now before I tell you about the Grasshopper product line, I first want to talk a tiny little bit about USB 3, because USB 3 was first introduced in 2008 by the USB group, like the consumer level USB 3 standardization group. And that is when Point Grey first started talking about USB 3. And I'm very excited to basically tell you that at the trade show now, there is just about everybody starting to introduce USB 3 products, and there's a lot of customer demand for USB 3. So Point Grey has been committed to this technology since 2008. In 2009, we introduced the first prototype camera of USB 3, which is this blue camera that you see here, and we demonstrated it here at the Vision Show. Now, this camera, this form factor here is what Point Grey uses as a form factor to introduce new technologies, and that was back in 2008. Point Grey is one of the founding members of USB 3 Vision Standard, and we've been in serial production of USB 3 cameras for over a year now. We have 8 models that range from 1.3 megapixel to 12 megapixel in full production right now. And we have, and I'm proud to say, more than 1,000 customers worldwide using USB 3 cameras. So I guess the point here is there's twofold. One of them is that USB 3 is really ready for prime time, and also Point Grey has been committed to USB 3 for a long, long time. The camera that you see here is our Fleet 3 camera, which is available in Firewire, USB 3, and PD. And this is the camera that has the sensors that go from 1.3 megapixel all the way to 12 megapixel. And they're primarily CMOS-based sensors that are in that camera. So the Grasshopper 3 that we're introducing is a new platform product that is supporting a variety of CCDs under USB 3. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the imaging performance and the sensors that we have selected to put into the camera. And essentially, they're all new high-performance Sony CCDs, some of which you might not even have heard of previously. They range from 2.8 megapixel to 9.2, and they're all quite big in terms of the optical size. Now, to put things a little bit into perspective, how many of you are familiar with the ICX285 CCD? Anybody? It's a 1/3-inch, 1.3 megapixel CCD that has basically been a standard for image sensitivity, or the sensor sensitivity and performance over the last probably 15 years in the machine vision industry. All these sensors basically have better imaging performance than what has been the standard for image performance in this industry. So in terms of quantum efficiency, every one of these sensors is actually better than the ICX285. So we're quite excited about the performance that we're going to get out of these cameras. Not to mention also that we have a high bandwidth interface which can allow you to, for example, get interpolated data, color interpolated data out of the camera, or a higher bit depth data out of the camera as well. And these are not all the sensors. This is a platform that we're planning to introduce other sensor into going forward. And if you'd like to talk about these sensors, please come by our booth and I'm happy to tell you more about that. So now the form factor, the camera is 44 by 29, so it's slightly larger than smaller cameras that we have. But the reason for that is that the CCDs that go into it are quite large. They go up to 1 inch, and we have made a decision to use C-mount lens, C-mount optics on 1 inch sensors because we feel that it's a more cost-effective way of producing cameras as opposed to going to F-mount. Now, Grasshopper 3 is USB 3 Vision compliant, and as a founding member of USB 3 Vision standard, we have made sure that the camera is not only compatible with our own software, but we're actively working with companies like National Instruments and Stemmer Blocks, for example, to make sure that our cameras are working through the standard with third-party software. And in the International Standards booth, you will see a variety of USB 3 cameras, including the Point Grey cameras running with NI software. Now, it's pretty important to understand what's the difference between the solutions that we provide with USB 3 as opposed to solutions that are, some of the solutions that are available out there. And the first thing is that Point Grey has actually developed the link layer level of the camera in an FPGA. So we don't have dependency on a third-party silicon manufacturer for our USB 3 functionality. Okay? So if there is any kind of issue that might come up, Point Grey has full control over the actual functionality of USB 3. There are chips which are quite inexpensive and easy to use that implement USB 3, but they can have problems, and if you have a problem, you basically are using a piece of silicon that is built by a third party, and you have to wait for that third party to actually address the issue. Okay? So that's the first thing. The second thing is that having been making USB 3 cameras for 3 years now or so, we have learned that it's very important to have a frame buffer. And the reason for that is that as much as we'd like to control the end-to-end imaging, it's difficult to control the host where the data is going to. So if the host was going to slow down for any reason, USB 3 can flood the host, and you will basically start getting corrupted images and even dropping images. So it's extremely important that you have lots of frame buffer on the camera. And in the Grasshopper 3, we're actually providing 128 megabytes worth of frame buffer. And finally, Point Grey provides a monolithic driver that we have implemented ourselves in order to make sure that the data that is coming from the interface and is being put into the memory is handled by infrastructure that we have full control over. So a lot of the other manufacturers will depend on the drivers that are provided by the host controller card. Now, that's not to say that you can't use those drivers, but if you want to have full control over it, we recommend using our driver, which we can control. So basically, everything from the camera to the buffering to the driver is controlled by technology that is developed by Point Grey. Also, Point Grey we have our own library called FlyCapture, and the FlyCapture library is actually cross-platform, so it works on a variety of operating systems as well as all the interfaces that we have. And we now support Windows 8, and we also support Linux and USB 3 is available on both of those operating systems. And in order to make sure that that we have a full end-to-end solution, we're also we have designed and we manufacture our own host controller cards. So, and that's the card right there. So, I will go back to the sensor that I started with, and I'll basically introduce the models and the pricing and availability. Okay, so the first model is going to be coming out in Q1 of next year, and the other 3 models are going to follow in Q2 of next year. And the pricing that you see here is basically presented both in euros as well as US dollars. And we believe that the combination of the camera pricing as well as the competitiveness of the USB 3 interface is going to make this a very compelling solution for people who might be using camera link solutions to get a lot of data into the computer, or even link aggregation, PoE link aggregation. So just to give you an idea, for about $110 in terms of card and cable, you can get up to 400 megabytes worth of data into your PC, which if you were using a camera link solution would probably cost about $1,000. So, as I mentioned, these kinds of solutions consist of a lot of different pieces. So we have clear demand for USB 3. Point Grey has experience with extensive experience with USB 3. Now we're introducing CCD imagers. We have a standard form factor. We're USB 3 compliant. We have an FPGA link player. We have frame buffer. We have our own driver. We support Windows 8 and Linux. And we have an excellent price. So that is how USB 3, Grasshopper 3 has come together. This is the end of my first presentation. Now, maybe you've sort of picked up on the format, so you can probably guess what the last slide is going to be in my second presentation. And I'll jump into it right now. So, before I talk about the product, I just want to put a little bit of context around the Blackfly camera. So in the late 1990s, we had analog cameras. And there still is very strong demand for 29 by 29 by 30 millimeter form factor. And of course, there's a huge price pressure and there's a huge demand for making sure that for that price, you get a lot of functionality as well. Okay? So, late 1990s, we had the market dominated by analog cameras. Then, in 2000s, we basically saw a whole bunch of cameras come out in the digital realm that essentially improved one upon the other, right? So, we had the FireWire A camera, a very small IBS, AVT, Basler. There were a lot of 29 by 29 solutions. I'm bringing this up for 2 reasons. One of them is that I'm going to make some claims about the Blackfly camera, and this is part of an evolution. Things sort of get better, and one manufacturer improves things and another one improves, and so on. So I don't want to say, oh, the Blackfly is the best camera and it'll be the best camera forever. In fact, that's probably not the case. We'll probably bring up even better camera in 2 years from now. But it is an evolution. That's one point. The second point is that through this market competition and continuous improvement, we've actually seen a creation of a standard which has just sort of evolved without any kind of governing body actually creating the standard itself. So the form factor, the GPIO, the mounting holes, and all these kinds of things are essentially standardized without somebody actually governing the standard itself. So this is 2000s, and then today we have the Blackfly camera. So we're making the claim that this is the world's smallest PoE PE camera, and it's starting at a very nice price of $299, which has been seen before, but you have to see the imaging performance of the camera in order to judge and see whether this is actually a revolution, an improvement in pricing or not. So we'll get to that eventually. So the sensors, it's a very interesting sensor lineup because we have 0.5 megapixel and 0.9 megapixel CCDs in 3rd-inch format. So very common resolution is VGA, so 0.3, and you have XGA, which is 0.8. Sony is now going up in terms of number of pixels, but it's keeping the optical form factor the same. And we're also offering 1/1.8, 1.3 megapixel global shutter CMOS sensor that runs at 60 frames per second. And similar to the previous presentation, there are more sensors coming, and we're happy to talk to you about your needs. So, size. BlackFly is world's smallest 29 by 29 millimeter camera, and it's really the length that differentiates it. And the next smallest competitor is 11 millimeters longer. And why is this important? It's important because you can basically fit the BlackFly into any design that uses 29 by 29 millimeter cross sections, regardless of how long your camera is, because most cameras that are on the market are 30 millimeters long, and those are the traditional analog cameras that are of that length. And a lot of the other cameras are actually a fair bit longer. Now the next spec is a little bit different, and I have a BlackFly here, and when I first picked it up, I basically didn't think this was a functioning camera. Okay, it's extremely light, and we're making a claim that this is actually world's lightest enclosed geeky camera. So it weighs only 38 grams, and the next competing camera, which is in a similar form factor, weighs anywhere between 61 and 90 grams. And you're happy to come and hold this camera after the presentation and see what I'm talking about. So why is this important? It's important because in a lot of semiconductor and electronics assembly applications, the cameras are moving, and the basically control of the camera motion is a lot easier if you're not moving a lot of weight around. Similarly, there are other applications, like whether you have an airborne device, or you have a handheld device, or you have a head-mounted device or something like that, it helps to have a lighter camera as well. Moving right along. As I mentioned already, the camera has standard mounting points, so there's 3 entry holes at the bottom of the camera, and there are also 4 N2 holes, which are very standard. You'll find them in all 29 by 29 sugar cube cameras. And one other thing that I should point out is, which is a little bit different than most cameras out there, BlackFly and also Fleet 2, Fleet 3s have also 2 mounting holes at the top as well. So why is this important? Because it helps with the mechanical integration of the camera into a standard form factor, standard designs that people have. Okay, efficiency. So, we're also making a claim that 1.3 megapixel, I'm being very careful here, the 1.3 megapixel version of the BlackFly camera is actually the lowest power consumption camera, PoE camera, available on the market today. So the actual specs is actually less than 2 watts of power that is being consumed by the camera when it's running at the full frame rate. And the next competition, if you were to look at the same sensor in the same form factor and the same PoE interface, you will find the cameras running at about 2.7 and up to 3 watts. So, and BlackFly can also be powered with external GPIO. So why is this important? Well, with less power, you have less heat, and with less heat, you have better image performance, and you also have less thermal expansion to worry about. So any kind of thermodynamics that you have in your system that you have to worry about if your camera gets really hot. And if the camera is quite small, they do get hot if they have a lot of power consumption. That is something, as somebody who's designing an imaging system, you have to worry about. Okay. Now, this is also interesting, and this is part of the evolution that I was talking about. The connector, the GPIO connector that Point Grey has traditionally used in our cameras, it used slightly different configurations, slightly different pinout, but basically, given that we find that there's kind of a standardization going on in the market, we're offering 2 opto-isolated inputs, one opto-isolated input and 1 opto-isolated output on a 6-pin Hirose connector. And again, this is in order to allow easy integration of the BlackFly into existing and new imaging systems. Now, even though it's so small and has so little power, consumes so little power, and is so light, it has a lot of functionality. So we have not really sacrificed any of the functionality of the camera itself. So it's Geeky Vision compliant. It says 16 megabytes of frame buffer. It has onboard color processing with all the bells and whistles of things like hue, saturation, gamma, lookup tables, and things like that. Pixel binning, decimations, regions of interest. The camera does all of that. But I also do want to point out that it has status monitoring. And for somebody who actually has to check whether the camera is working, or you're assembling, on your assembly line where you're actually building your imaging system, when you power up the camera, there's an LED to tell you that the camera is actually getting power. The camera also has temperature, voltage, and current sensors in the camera itself, so you can get an idea of how much power it's really consuming and what impact that power consumption is having on the heat within the camera. So, with extensive camera functionality, it's easy to integrate the camera into your imaging solutions. Now I'm going to get to the Blackfly models, and I'll start with the one that is going to be introduced very shortly. It's going to be within a month or so. And it's the 1.3 megapixel version, which I already mentioned is shipping at 299 euros. And you may have noticed in our advertising that it says starting at 299. And so when our product group actually came out with the pricing for the 0.5 and 0.9 megapixel cameras, I was quite surprised because they were actually less than $299. So the 0.9 is going to sell at $279, and 0.5 megapixel with 50 frames per second is going to sell at basically 250 euros, which is, I thought, an excellent price. And it was sort of funny because it starts at 299 and it goes down. So I thought that was interesting. Now, don't expect all the models to keep going down, but certainly I think that this pricing is going to be quite attractive for a lot of people. Now, the other point to make is that I wouldn't say it's not hard to make a camera that is inexpensive. Okay, there's lots of people who can advertise a camera that is inexpensive. The issue is that when there is a lot of demand out there and you're putting out an inexpensive camera, you have to make sure that you have capabilities to meet the demand and build a high-quality product that is reliable and will meet the customer's needs. So the next slide really talks about Point Grey's experience and capabilities. So we've been in business for 15 years. We have 160 employees. We have a capacity of more than 120,000 cameras that we can build per year. We have in-house electronic assembly, which is very important because you can actually control the quality of the product that is being built, as well as the quality of the components that are being placed onto the electronics that you're building. And we also do 100% inspection. And all of this is done at the prices that I just presented. Finally, we have exceptional customer service and support, and we offer a 3-year warranty on a $249 Euro camera. So, putting it all together, there's clear demand for cameras like what I just described. We have excellent imaging. We have the smallest size, lightest weight, power over Ethernet with GigaVision compliance, low power consumption, standard mounting and GPIO, extensive camera functionality, world-class manufacturing and service, and best price starting at $299 and going down. That makes the Blackfly. Thank you very much, and come visit us at the booth 1B42. Thank you.